Hi everyone, welcome to the Living Life Show. This is Marcos Ojeda and today is May 14th. We have a great show for you tonight. This show is exciting, proud, honored, and why not happy to announce that our first guest is going to join us tonight. He is a banking executive with extensive experience who has worked in some of the world's most prestigious international rating agencies, investment banks, and development banks. He has a deep knowledge of United States culture, a profound understanding of international politics. He is a friend of this show, and he is a friend of mine. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Living Life Show our first guest, Mr. Rui Croca.
Hi, Marcos. How are you? It's an honor to be here. Huh?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rui. So, our first question for you two is, we have been in lockdown for more than 8 weeks now. It feels like we've been in lockdown forever. So, how are you holding up? I mean, how has your life changed since the lockdown?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate you on your show. I mean, it's in these troubling times, it's a breath of fresh air to have such inspiring words from you. And I know it's taking a lot of interest from a lot of people. So good luck on your future endeavors. We wish you all the best, of course. I mean, in terms of the lockdown, I mean, like everyone, I'm just adapting to this new reality of social distancing. And, I do miss the social interaction with people, friends, family. I also miss not being able to travel back home to Lisbon, but, can't complain.
Okay. I mean, and it should be especially hard for you because you've been living in many countries around the world throughout your life. I know that you spent around 10 years living in the United Kingdom. And about that, the UK in January was the first country ever to leave the European Union. Now is one of the countries with the highest death toll due to the coronavirus crisis. So what's your view on how the UK government, led by Boris Johnson, is dealing with this crisis, and how is this going to impact the relationship of the UK with the EU?
Well, I think to describe the way that Boris Johnson has been handling this pandemic crisis in one word, I would call it shambolic. No, I think he started with a very cavalier attitude where he was almost not taking this seriously, which then culminated with him getting infected with the virus. And people should not think of this as him taking one for the team. No, I think this happened because he didn't take it seriously. And by not taking it seriously and not being informative enough, he jeopardized the life of people. And you mentioned Brexit, and I hope that the irony is not lost on him. The fact that he owes his life, and he admitted so, he owes his life to an institution that he instrumentalized to push forward his Brexit agenda. And in the end, he completely let them down because he paraded in front of a red double-decker promising 350 million pounds per week of support. And NHS is struggling. I mean, they don't have the sufficient means. There's more than 140 deaths in the UK from nurses, doctors, basically frontline personnel. And because NHS is not prepared, they don't have basic PPE equipment. And another irony that I hope is not lost on him is the fact that another element of his Brexit campaign was this like anti-immigration speech. And in the end, and he also admitted as well, that he owed his life to two nurses, one from New Zealand, another one from Portugal, which, I mean, it's just the irony itself. You couldn't make this up. I would say if it was not for the human drama of so many lives that have lost in the UK, this would almost be Monty Python-esque. No, I think this could be a script out of Monty Python. And but yeah, I think the handling it's been shambolic, and now they need to cope, to cope with not dealing with the Brexit, which I think certainly would be a distraction. So unfortunate. I think things will get worse before they get better in the UK.
Yeah. And about the way in which different political leaders are handling this crisis, if we go to the other side of the Atlantic, we can see that in the US, in the same country, we have two different leadership styles handling this crisis. On one side, we have governors like Andrew Cuomo in New York, like Gavin Newson in California, who are strictly following CDC guidelines, who are imposing lockdowns. I mean, yes, yesterday, the mayor of LA extended the lockdown for 3 months. They are communicating factual, science-based information to the US citizens. And on the other side, we do have other governors and also the president of the United States, Donald Trump, who are rushing up, probably, they want to open up the economy as soon as possible, despite the advice against doing so of many scientists, including the Dr. Anthony Faucci. In this context, how do you think that this is going to impact the US democratic system? And also, how is this going to be reflected in the upcoming presidential elections of November?
Well, I think that the elections are playing a major part in the handling of the crisis. If you could describe the UK handling of the pandemic as shambolic, I would describe the handling of the US administration as disastrous. No, and I think that the major factor that they have guiding the handling of this crisis is the election scheduled for November this year. And the fact that Trump wants to get reelected, right? And so he's letting this agenda of his reelection driving his decisions, and the economy is a vital part of that reelection, right? Because that's what Trump is banking on, and you see that even other people, some people in the U.S. that they don't necessarily agree with Donald Trump policies. I mean, the economy has been performing very well. So it's this notion that the rising tide lifts all the boats, right? And so even though they're not agree with the policies, when they look at their 401ks, they like what they see. So they are willing to probably giving him a passing in some other policies that they don't agree, as long as the economy continues to perform. And right now, he's facing down the barrel of probably the worst economic recession in the country since the Great Depression. And he's going to be the president that is going to be associated with that. So he wants to avoid that at all costs, and he wants to reopen the economy quickly so that he can start, kickstart the economy and have the recovery in time for the election. And of course, and you look at other leadership in handling this crisis, and it's reflecting on the approval rates. You mentioned Gavin Newsom, Andrew Cuomo. I mean, certainly nobody has the playbook how to handle this pandemic, right? I mean, this is uncharted territory. This is unprecedented. So, Andrew Cuomo, he made mistakes as well. But I mean, he's been following the data, following the facts, following the science, and his main goal, as he said, is to save lives. I mean, the economy, you can always kickstart the economy again. You cannot, those people that lost their lives, you cannot bring them back. So that's the main purpose of some of these governors. And you can see in their approval ratings that this is reflected. I think people acknowledge that they've been handling the crisis much better than the White House, because when they look at the White House, a president that claims that he's very smart, he has a very high IQ, but then he unleashes pearls of wisdom, like suggesting to inject disinfectant and UV light in the body. So I mean, who are you gonna listen to? Somebody that utters this type of nonsense, or somebody that is willing to handle the crisis following what science is saying and following the recommendations of Anthony Fauci, for instance, Dr. Anthony Fauci, which now they're trying to make him a bad guy and blame non-reopening on the economy on the guy. But going back to the leadership style, I mean, I think you mentioned in one of your shows that, leadership is forged in adversity, right? Cometh the hour, cometh the man, no? And if you look back in history and look sticking with these two countries, the UK and the US, how they've fared through testing times, and this is certainly probably one of the most testing times we've had since World War II. We look back in World War II, and you had for the UK you had Winston Churchill, and for the US you had FDR, which they were far from political consensus, but you see that they managed to rise to the occasion, and they galvanized the country and they unified the country behind them. And those two speeches, I mean, the Churchill speech that we shall fight in the beaches, and the FDR speech of the date that will live in infamy, I mean, they are in history as two pivotal moments that change the course of the war and were inspirational to win the war. When history looked down or looked back into the handling of the pandemic crisis by the UK leadership and the US leadership, and they look at the Boris Johnson speech, erratic speech, just a few days ago, and they look at Trump's daily briefings where he suggests to people to inject bleach to kill the virus. History will look at this as the WTF moments. It's like, what were you thinking? How did this happen? But I think it's again, if it was not for the drama, this would be something that you cannot make up. But
exactly. And now, talking actually about the experts that you mentioned, many of them, including Bill Gates, are saying that this world is not going to go back to normal until a vaccine is developed, effective treatment is found, or massive testing and tracing is put into place. Others are saying that even with that, the world is never going to go back to how it was before 2020. Now, on that sense, what's your view? How do you think that this new normal is going to look like?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't even know what normal is anymore. I think that in 2016, we entered into this dystopian world with a nihilist society where the narrative is controlled by social media and not facts and not the truth. So I think this is the worst scenario where you have to handle a global crisis such as climate change or this pandemic. I think when we would expect that this common enemy would be what would unite countries and bring everybody together to fight for the same goal, you see that you still have the divisiveness, the blame game with who is responsible, because nobody wants to take responsibility and they rather blame someone else for these events. So I don't think this is the best environment to work together and sharing knowledge, sharing development, and push forward in the efforts of the vaccine. I do hope that people that act as an inspiration like Bill Gates, and they do have through his philanthropic work, he has the means to promote the search for this vaccine. I hope that this happens through these means and through this selfless entity that will be willing to share the vaccine worldwide. And I think we'll have, in the meantime, until this happens, we have to be used to living, with the use of masks, with the new, we have to change the way that we socially interact with each other. I think there are some silver linings in this pandemic. Maybe the fact that now we'll see the introduction of more flexible working arrangements where we can use more of the technology to give flexibility to people. But I think we'll need to adjust. But if the normal is to go back to what we've witnessed since 2016, I hope this pandemic is used to change that normal and we don't go back to it.
I agree. One of the things that has also changed is sports. Now, many of our spectators will not know, but Rui, you are one of the persons that knows the most about many sports in the world. I mean, there is very few people that know that many about many sports. I mean, you know about football, soccer, rugby, baseball, hockey, I mean, you name it. Now, one of the sports that you know about, and that is not very popular here in Europe or in the US, although it has a massive audience worldwide, it's cricket. So what is it that captured your attention? I mean, what do you like about cricket? How did you get to cricket, and what do you like about it?
Well, I am a sports enthusiast. I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'm claiming that I'm the people that knows more about sports, but I think I got interested in cricket when I moved to the UK when I was living in London. I mean, I didn't know anything about cricket back then, and then through some colleagues, some friends, English friends, I got introduced to cricket, and I played a bit and I watched, and it's a fascinating sport. I mean, there's so many different nuances about cricket that we would not have time to explain here. But it's a fascinating sport. First of all, people would be surprised to know that it like you said, it has a massive audience, because it's the number one sport in India, number one sport in Pakistan, number one sport in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Very, very strong, and then with a lot of Legion fans in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, maybe just second, just behind rugby probably, and also in the UK. So it is in a sense a global sport. And then I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, which other sport do you know that you play for 5 consecutive days and you can still end up with a draw or a tie? I mean, I don't think it happens. And I got really interested in cricket during the 2005 Ashes series. So for those who don't know, the Ashes series happen every 2 years, and this is the test matches between Australia and England, and they play for probably the tiniest trophy in the world. Is like this urn, like this big, and this started in 1882, I think. So it's one of the fiercest rivalries in sport, and it goes way back. But I mean, there's so many interesting aspects of cricket, like the sledging, which you would think that this is a gentleman's sport, but the sledging, the trash talk in cricket, it has some magnificent plays there, and once you start digging into it, and it's really interesting. But maybe we'll do another show about it one day.
maybe it's a good idea. Well, Rui, it has been an honor having you in this show. You are and will forever be the first guest to be interviewed in the Living Life show, and we are very happy and very grateful for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Rui.
I cannot tell you how honored I am, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on your show, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Rui. Thank you.